right. How is everybody? Yes, long time since we last talked. Once again, we are going to talk to push on. You know that this is a trying moment whereby COVID is affecting everybody. You are affected as we are being affected. Very sorry for that. But God will see us through. Last time, I took you through a lot of things in social studies about climate. We are going to deliberate on the same things. But before we go to that, there are some expectations out of you. There are some things I expect out of you as we do this lesson. One, make sure that you are very attentive. Make sure that nobody is disturbing you here and there. Make sure that if you have a phone, make sure that you put it in silent mode. The rest will work out. Most importantly, make sure that you are attentive. Last time, in this lesson, these are the learning intentions. What do I intend? What do we intend to get out of this lesson? Are the competencies. So you are expected to state factors that influence climate at the end of it all, and be in a position to describe how each factor that we are going to see affects climate. And as if that's not enough, still you will be in position to articulate words properly, the way I'm going to say them. And you'll be in a position to spell the words correctly. There are various factors that affect climate. Now, I have a question for you. Because this is not new. You learned about it in P5, in P6, now in P7. Could you mention some of the factors that influence climate? Think about it. I'm giving you a few seconds. Factors that influence climate. As you put things right, here we are. Here we go. 1, latitude. What does latitude mean to you? We shall see how each one affects climate as we move on. Now, what does latitude mean to you? As we think about it, I guess still you are right. I guess you are right, even writing something down. I can help you out. Latitude refers to the distance north or south of the equator. That's the distance from the equator. It affects climate in one way or another, as we are going to see. And what is climate all about? Climate is basically rainfall, wetness, or dryness of an area. So we shall see that these factors you can see here either cause rainfall, that is wetness of an area, or dryness of an area. Another factor to look at is altitude. What does the term altitude refer to? Altitude is the height above sea level. We begin counting from the level of the sea. 1 meter, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So altitude is the height above sea level. How does this one affect climate? We are going to see. But the more you move up, it will become cool. The more you move downwards, it will become hot. In other words, the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. We are going to see how it affects climate. Another one is prevailing winds. Winds, I guess, what does the term wind mean according to you? Because it's not in you. You have learned it in science, in social studies. What does it mean? To help you a little, wind is moving air. So as wind moves from one point to another, you find that somewhere it can pick moisture. If that moisture is warm, it can rise up and eventually cause wetness of an area, that's rainfall. Or if it moves into cold areas, those winds will be heavy, therefore will not be in a position to rise up, therefore to form rain. In one way or another, these winds contribute to rainfall or drainage of an area. If it happens is that the winds blowing to an area are warm, moist, rainfall definitely has to be caused. Rainfall will be received. On the other hand, if the winds that blow are cold, they are heavy, they cannot go up to reach the condensation level, then to form rainfall. In one or another, the winds, for that case the prevailing ones, contribute to climate. They will either cause wetness or dryness in an area. Here we go. There is also relief as another factor. What's relief? As you still think about it, I can help you out. Relief refers to the appearance of landscape. When you look at landscape, when you look around, you may find that some land is low, some land is high. We have plains, we have mountains. Now, let's bring a bit, come back, deliberate a bit on mountains. When you look at a mountain, some at different levels, the condition is, the weather, the condition is, the climatic conditions will be different. You may find that at a certain point, at a low point of a landscape or a mountain, it will be a bit warm, but as you move upwards, it will become cool, and to a certain extent somewhere, of course where there is snow, because some mountains are very high, where you see snow, it will be cold. All those are issues to do with the climate. Meanwhile, anyway, we shall describe how each one, how this relief as a point, as a factor of climate, influences climate. We shall look at it in details. In this lesson, another factor is vegetation. What is vegetation? Because before we get to know how it affects climate, we must know its description. Because if you are going to state how it affects the climate, we minus knowing it, then you would be stuck somewhere somehow. What does the term vegetation mean as a factor that influences climate? Vegetation is the plant cover of an area. Different areas have different kinds of vegetation. In some areas, the vegetation is thick. In some areas, the vegetation is scattered, is scanty. For example, in desert areas or semi-desert areas. But in other areas, like in the equatorial region, the vegetation is very thick, tall, very thick. Now, the way that vegetation affects climate is different. If the way thick vegetation affects the climate is different from what scanty vegetation or little vegetation affects it. Where there is plenty of it, where there is thick vegetation, of course, plenty of rainfall is received. On the other hand, where the vegetation is scanty, is scattered, like in semi-desert areas, the vegetation is, those areas are likely to be very dry. For that case, desert areas are very dry, because they don't have vegetation, or the vegetation they have is little, therefore cannot contribute to much transpiration, therefore to cause rainfall in one way or another. There is also another issue, another factor of climate, or that affects climate of Africa, as water bodies. When we talk about water bodies, we are talking about large ones, not small ones like a pond, or these very small lakes, smaller rivers. No. These water bodies that help to form rain or that influence climate are large. For example, Lake Victoria, Lake Albert, those big ones, those large water bodies, they help to form rain. And when rain is formed, of course, it has contributed to climate. It causes wetness, of an area. And for that case, as we look at our description, how each of these factors affects climate, you realize that those areas that are far away from large water bodies may experience little rainfall, very little rainfall. So we move on to the next factor that influences climate. The last one, but not least, that is oceanic currents. What does the term current mean? That is the steady flow of water in an ocean. That one affects climate in a way that, so that steady flow of water in an ocean is what we call oceanic current. It also affects climate, as we are going to see in our next session. Friends, can we describe how each of these factors affects the climate of Africa? 1, latitude. 2, altitude. 3, prevailing winds. 4, relief. 5, vegetation. 6, water bodies. And 7, oceanic currents. Think about it before you come in. I guess we are doing some constructive work there. I'm giving you a few seconds such that we can go through together. Let's look at each one in the details. To begin with is latitude. As I told you initially, that latitude refers to the distance, north or south of the equator. This is a diagrammatic representation. This is, assumably, this is the equator. Equator line, which is labeled 0 degree. So this distance, northwards or southwards from the equator, is what we call latitude. How does it affect climate of an area? I told you that climate is all about the wetness or dryness of an area. How does latitude, how does this equator affect climate? Because we know that latitudes affect climate. Most importantly, the equator. How does it affect climate? What you must know is the nearer you move towards the equator, the hotter it becomes. If areas along the equator are very hot, perhaps you should ask why. Why are those areas hot? But before we go to that, another issue you should know is these areas still along the equator receive plenty of rainfall. Why is also another question. And when we talk about the wetness or dryness of an area, we are talking about nothing else but climate. How does altitude affect climate? I mean latitude, for that case the equator. You know, when you look at this diagrammatic representation, this one shows you, it works hand in hand with the sun. Because the sun, which causes the different climatic conditions on latitudes. Now, when you look at the equator, the distance from the sun here to the equator is a bit shorter than the distance from the sun to this point, or from the sun to this point. What does that mean? When you look at these rays, sun rays, the distance from the sun here is shorter. Therefore, the sun rays hit the equator. For that case, we are referring as the latitude line. Directly, therefore, the distance it takes from the sun to reach the equator is short. And by the time the sun rays reach the equator, they are very strong. Therefore, a lot of heat will be experienced here. On the other hand, if you look at these rays which are a bit divergent, by the time the distance covered from here to here is longer than the distance covered from here to here. Therefore, these places that are directly hit that are directly heated by the sun rays are hotter than these ones that are a bit divergent. By the time they move from here to here, they'll become a bit weak. Therefore, these rays from here to here are very hot compared to these ones. That one itself is climate. That one itself is causing the variations in the climate. Areas near the equator are hot. On the other hand, areas far away from the equator are a bit cool. Therefore, the farther you move away from the equator, the cooler it becomes. On the other hand, the nearer you move towards the equator, the hotter it becomes. Therefore, areas near the equator, being that are very hot, receive plenty of rainfall. How does this one come about? It's very simple. In most cases, there are very many areas that have water bodies along the equator. Now, these sun rays, which are very strong, hit the water bodies and cause evaporation. At the same time, there are a lot of plants, forests along it. What happens is evaporation takes place. They lose water through stomata, and therefore reach the condensation level in the sky, and then rainfall is received. That's why I say that places near the equator receive plenty of the rainfall. They are very hot, at the same time receive plenty of rainfall. We'll go to another point, another factor. That's altitude. I've told you that altitude is the height above sea level. Areas on high altitude are cool, whereas those ones on low altitude are hot. We go. Yeah, I've been saying talking about deliberating on altitude. Altitude is the height above sea level. And I've said that areas on high altitude are cool. On the other hand, places on low altitude are hot. You know, when you move, you realize that areas on low altitude, for example, for us in Kampala, quite around here, when you go down there to Keza Preparatory School, the conditions are a bit hot compared to us who are on high altitude. The foothills of a mountain are warm, but when you move upwards, the area becomes cool. That explains, we have this explanation with there is a saying that the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. Likewise, when you move on a high altitude, it will become cool. When you move downwards, it will become warm to some extent. Somewhere, it will even become hot. So the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. The lower you go, the higher you go, the cooler. The lower, the hotter. You know, as you move high altitude, in fact, when you move upwards by 100 meters, you realize that temperatures will reduce by about a degree Celsius. And likewise, as you move downwards, temperatures will increase. If you move about 100 meters downwards, a mountain, you will gain about a degree, hotness. So the higher you go, the cooler. Therefore, areas on high altitude are cool. On the other hand, areas on low altitude are hot or warm. We move on. Another factor. Prevailing winds. What are winds? Winds are masses of air in motion. Winds keep moving about from one direction to another. In places where most winds blow, plenty of rainfall is received. Whereas in places where dry winds blow, little rainfall is received. Yeah, let's look at this diagrammatic representation. These are northeast monsoon winds. They are warm and dry. They originate from Arabia, come through the Horn of Africa. Those winds that come into here and to the Horn of Africa are warm and dry. What does it mean? They don't carry moisture. Since they don't carry moisture, they will not drop rainfall in Africa. Therefore, they are responsible for the dry conditions in Africa. When you look at these Harmattan winds brought from the Sahara Desert to West Africa. They are also dry. This is the spelling of the word harmattan. Can you spell it wherever you are? It's Harmattan. Those winds that blow across Sahara Desert are hot and dry. They don't have moisture. If they don't have moisture, that means they can't form rain. Friends, it's like there is a short story. Very short. One time there was a woman that, long ago they used to boil in sauce. They could cook sauce in pots. There was one time a woman that boiled an empty pot and expected to soup. But sincerely speaking, friends, do you think that woman got soup? I doubt it, because she boiled an empty pot. Likewise, these winds are dry. They don't carry any moisture. Therefore, they just deposit dry conditions to West Africa. They don't bring rainfall. Therefore, they are responsible for dry conditions to all these areas. Whereas these are westerly winds or westerlies. These ones blow towards the South Africa from this tip, and others are here. They are the same. Those ones carry, they are warm, moist winds. Therefore, as they move over this ocean, they move and deposit rainfall on this mainland of South Africa. So you find that where warm, moist winds, those winds that contain moisture blow, they reach somewhere and they move up and eventually cause rainfall. Whereas in places where dry winds blow, never expect any rainfall. Therefore, they cause hot conditions or dry conditions. Whereas where warm, moist winds blow, of course, they deposit rainfall in those areas. We go to another factor. We move on. Relief. I've already told you that relief is the general appearance of the landscape. Most highlands receive plenty of rainfall to their windward side. On the other hand, the leeward side of a highland and lowland areas receive little or no rainfall. The diagrammatic representation is here, which is a mountain. Now, areas on a low altitude, first of all, are hot. Areas on a high altitude are always cool. Now, for this case, how relief affects the climate? We bring in this diagrammatic representation of a mountain. So, when the winds blow across a water body, they pick moisture. They pick moisture because this water is evaporating. Because it is light, it is warm, and therefore light. As it moves, evaporation takes place. There is evaporation from this water. So as these winds blow, we'll pick this moisture and move with it. Being that this is a block, they can't go through it. Those winds can't go through it. No. Therefore, this feature will block it and therefore enable the warm air rise up. At a condensation level, those water droplets will condense. They will form thick clouds that will later drop rainfall. On this side, and this side which receives the rainfall on a highland is called a windward side. On the other hand, this one which receives little or no rainfall is what we call the leeward side. So people at the leeward side are lucky, people at the windward side are lucky. They are likely to receive plenty of rainfall. On the other hand, those at the leeward side are very unlucky because they receive little or no rainfall. We are also looking at vegetation as another factor that influences the climate. What's vegetation? Vegetation is the plant cover of an area. Vegetation is not uniform where it grows. In some places, vegetation is thick. In other areas, it is fair. In other areas, it is Very little. It is scanty, scattered. So, those areas that have thick vegetation have very high chances of receiving a lot of rainfall. Whereas those ones that have little vegetation, for example, semi-desert areas where the vegetation is very little, or desert areas, those places are likely to receive very little or no rainfall. There are some areas that can hardly receive rainfall in desert because they don't have vegetation at all. We move on. There is also water bodies. These water bodies must be large enough. For example, seas, oceans, lakes, those big ones. But not something small like a pond and you say that it's a water body, therefore will contribute to formation of rain, therefore influencing climate of an area. No. The distance of an area from a large water body such as a lake or sea affects the temperature of that area. Areas near large water bodies receive plenty of rainfall. Why? As the water bodies are responsible for causing rainfall. So when they are heated, evaporation will take place. And as they move, the moist winds move up, they reach condensation level. Eventually, those clouds will drop rainfall. Eventually, they will cause wetness of that given area. On the other hand, those areas that are far from large water bodies have no chance of getting or experiencing a lot of rainfall. For that case, they receive very little rainfall. Another factor, oceanic currents. Oceanic currents is that flow of water in an ocean. Now, these ones are caused by movements of wind. If they blow towards a particular direction, so how do they affect climate? You know that there are two types of currents, oceanic currents, the cool ones and warm ones. In areas where warm ones blow, rainfall is likely to be experienced, like the Aglas, the Guinea currents, the Somali, the Mozambique. On the other hand, these areas that we have, to which cool ocean currents blow, receive little or no rainfall. So friends, I think you have been in touch very well. I believe you have done some work. That's very fine. Now, let's remind ourselves. Can you state some factors that have influenced climate? Think about it. Do you know each factor influences the climate? Think about it. Do that work. You will send that work and we shall see what to do with it. Friends, as I began, I told that this is a trying moment of COVID. We have even had some deaths. So COVID is real. Let's be protective. Let's try to protect our lives. Let's keep safe such that we can go through. I want you alive. I want you should be okay. We don't want to lose anybody. Be very cautious. Be very attentive with your life. Be very cautious with your lives. We have a piece of work that will be shown to you. I believe you will do it and make sure that you do it everywhere. I thank you very much. Chimuli Julius, my name. Thank you.